Hello, Year 11. Those of you that have diligently watched your videos in order, i.e. you've watched your Shakespeare video already, will know the answers to this question. Those of you that haven't, we'll go through them anyway. So what do these images tell us about what the examiner wants to see from excellent literature responses? The umbrella is to do with the overview, where you explore the general significance of the character or theme you have been given before providing detailed evidence from the extract or wider play. This is exactly the same for Shakespeare. Same approach. They like an overview where you explore the general significance of that character or theme. They're looking for a coherent response, ideas that are linked together, a strong thread that's holding the whole essay up, where all connections that are made link back to that core theme or core character that you're exploring. And also evidence that you're able to dig down and explore, which means offer more than one connotation of particular word choices or structural devices taken for a specific effect. So you've got to show that you have talked about language, which is word choice, structure, which is the way it's structured, and form, which in this case is a play text and Insepctor Calls, and you're able to dig down and explore the connotations in some depth. So this is a new question for us, 2022, right about the theme of responsibility in an Insepctor Calls and how it's presented at different points in the play. The questions always look like this. It's got your title at the top and Insepctor Calls. You are advised to spend 1 hour on this question. Remember, you've got longer than previous cohorts because you are the COVID kids. Other years, it was 45 minutes. You use the extract below to start with the extract and then your knowledge of the whole play to answer the question. Write about the theme of responsibility in an Insepctor Calls and how it is presented at different points in the play. You start with the extract and then you use that to springboard off other ideas and track that particular theme or character, if it's a character question, throughout the play, showing that you understand everything about the characters and events. You get a mark out of 35 for your Insepctor Calls work and 5 for SPAG. So remember how to spell Priestley and capital letters for characters' names. Thank you. This is the extract that this particular paper is focusing on. I'm not going to read it out to you. You can pause this video and give it a read yourself. So you would have noticed, oh, sorry, I jumped on a shot there. This is taken from towards the end when the inspector is giving his final talk to the Burlings about their part, their role in Eva Smith's death. It's a significant moment in the text, especially that chunk at the bottom. The next few slides are going back over how you could analyse the that particular bottom part of this extract. You can skip on through that if you're very confident with this already. Here are just some things that you could talk about this particular moment of the inspector's speech, but just remember this: one Eva Smith has gone, but there are millions and millions and millions of Eva Smiths and John Smiths still left with us, with their lives, their hopes and fears, their suffering and chance of happiness, all entwined with our lives and what we think or do. The red, it starts with that simple sentence on the speech before the inspector's departure. So it emphasises this lasting impact he wants to have on the Burlings. You've got to talk about language, and I feel as a cohort with an Insepctor Calls, we tend to focus more on plot and fall into too much context. Context isn't assessed explicitly in this response. So those of you that constantly get AO2 language feedback as a point to improve, this is what we mean. One Eva Smith has gone. When one is used, Eva Smith's been objectified. He's showing that there are many people like her. She's the everyman figure. She's emblematic of the proletariat working class. The inspector's wanting to make the Burlings realise this. Millions and millions of Eva Smiths and John Smiths are still left with us. He's saying there is an opportunity still for the Burlings to change the way they treat people. Priestley's use of common names with Smith or Eva and John, he's trying to show the universal suffering of the working class. It's not just women, it is men that are suffering this pain. And that final complex sentence there on this snippet shows the huge gap in between the rich and the poor. The inspector is overpowering the whole scene. He's trying to make the Burlings feel guilty and responsible by laying all of these ideas down through this complex sentence. Also, there are uses of tricolon, your triplets, that which we use with, it's a very persuasive speech, this, lots of rhetoric is used. So we've got the millions and millions and millions, that repetition, the sort of triplet, and also their lives, their hopes, and fears, their suffering and chance of happiness. That's your tricolon, your tripling, used to build with this climax. But also the idea of ethos. This speech by the inspector uses ethos, pathos, and logos. And ethos is that idea of persuading through your reputation. You're trying to make friends with the audience, that those collective pronouns, us and we, the inspector's using that to really appeal to the audience, because we can see that actually it's lost. His argument is lost on Mr. and Mrs. Burling. He says, we don't live alone, we are members of one body. The Burlings have clearly lost touch with any sense of community they once had. He's highlighting this self-centered behaviour of the capitalists. That repetition of we, that ethos, is there to bring us all together and give credibility to what he's saying. But there's the dramatic irony that's incorporated at the end with that almost biblical reference of being taught in fire and blood and anguish. We think of, hell, going to hell if you don't learn from your sins. There is the 7 deadly sins approach that you can read with this didactic play as well. But here we're just going to focus on how dramatic irony is incorporated, as the audience of Priestley's time would be aware that World War I and II occurred as a result of untrustworthy promises and selfish acts. So we could read the fire and blood and anguish as a reference to these wars as well. If we don't change, you've just lived through these wars, we will be reliving this nightmare. This links to the idea of Ouspensky's time theory, where you go, you keep going round on a cycle, repeating your same acts until you learn from them and move on. Okay, so you've got your extract. And what you should do is think about whereabouts in this play has the extract been taken from. You place the extract. This is taken from towards the end. It's in Act 3. This is where the inspector, naughty Mrs. Murray, I've written inspector with a lowercase I. I would need to change that. The inspector gets the last word on the Burlings, and at the same time, he's seemingly addressing the audience fully. This is Priestley's way of moving socialism from the stage to the House of Commons. He's opening it out to a wider audience. He's wanting to evoke change on a large scale. When Inspector Gould stands at the centre of this stage at the start of this extract, taking charge masterfully, it's clear to the audience and the Burlings he's about to say something of great significance. This speech encapsulates Priestley's purpose, because Gould throughout is Priestley's mouthpiece, but very much so the playwright's mouthpiece, as he's articulating his socialist vision and warnings for not heeding his warning to the audience. There is no doubt in the audience's mind that Priestley wants the audience to think we are all responsibility for one another at this point in the play. So we're just thinking about, what does the extract tell us about the theme of responsibility? I think it's that Priestley thinks it's important, and it's his last ditch attempt to try and get the Burlings to take that on board. We see Eric and Sheila evoking change through the way they are responding to this, not so much Burling. Okay, so what are the ideas around responsibility at this point in the play? So the sorts of things you could talk about are equality. Priestley presents the idea that you either need to start trying to create and live in an equal society, or you're going to be facing the consequences on, you know, maybe another war, where there's going to be intense suffering and destruction. The idea of responsibility is shown very much through the use of rhetoric. Priestley is showing how important he believes social responsibility to be by using rhetoric to persuade the audience. He's using ethos, logos, and pathos throughout. There's also no doubt at all over what he is trying to say. The inspector taking charge at the start, ensuring that he's commanded the attention of both the audience and the Burlings, and then walking straight out abruptly at the end shows there's no room for discussion or argument. The situation is clear cut. The audience should hopefully now go and help others and play their role in moving society towards a socialist ideal. If you're wanting to have a go at exploring this extract a little more, these are some prompts that can help you. Why are adverbs used in the stage directions? And look specifically at the inspector masterfully and massively. Those adverbs to describe the inspector show he commands, he's in charge, he overpowers the Burlings, despite in the hierarchy of society he's actually lower down. He's taking charge. Eric's unhappy, Sheila's bitter, quietly crying. Burling is unhappy, he's unhappily, but is that more because he's being found out? So you can look at how the characters are described through adverbs in the stage directions to show how they think and feel their role in society, social responsibility plays. Can you find ethos, pathos and logos in there? Where is he using those rhetorical devices? What's the effect on the audience? If you would prefer not to look at ethos, pathos and logos and just look at things such as rhetorical questions, tripling, collective pronouns, rhetoric, where can you find it? Link back to the previous slides. What's the effect on the audience? It's a persuasive text. It's like a speech, like a political speech he's trying to give. How do the hyphens? There's lots of hyphens. Hyphens are used to replicate natural breaks in speech, especially in play texts. How do all the hyphens help to convey the effect of the inspector's speech on the characters? Look at Burling is using hyphens there. I'd give thousands, yes, thousands. Again, do we think that that's because he's actually sorry, I'm wanting to accept his part in it, or is he just sorry he got caught? How is dramatic irony used on this speech to emphasize a need to reflect and change on the audience? The audience at Priestley's time, as well as the modern day audience, know if we don't look out for each other, if we're not more kind, there is going to be fire and blood and anguish. And what imagery has the most impact? Do you think it's the biblical imagery? Do you think it's this idea of being one body, entwined? Is it the everyman figure? What imagery do you think has the most impact? And what are your final conclusions? How would you define the theme of responsibility? Do you believe the audience will change? Do you pity the characters on the stage? They're the sorts of things you can say about this extract. But of course, you have to talk about the theme of responsibility across the text as a whole, and I would link that to how the characters are reacting to the inspector's questions. You know, Mrs. Burling refusing to accept her role, Eric shifting eventually. So the just go to the mark scheme. The mark scheme for an Insepctor Calls, which is the one on the left, is very similar to the Shakespeare one, both the extract and the essay question. Your top band, your grade, your band 5 is that idea of the sustained focus, including the overview, so that umbrella, and that consistent coherence is the idea of your strong argument that you're presenting about that character and theme throughout, so you're focused on what it is you're trying to say. And then that digging deeper, that AO2, looking at language, form and structure and exploring and evaluating how powerful the particular word choices are. The challenge with an Insepctor Calls question is it's like the essay question for Shakespeare. You need to talk about the whole text, but the principles remain the same. So this is the question. Here are some thoughts that may help you to create a response to this. Feel free to not use our ideas at all, come up with your own plan. But there is social responsibility, as what does it mean? Equality, the biblical references, ethos, pathos and logos that are used within the speech. So adverbs showing how the character's responding to the stark message from the inspector, and maybe track through and look at how the characters respond to the inspector's questioning a different way. Burling at this extract is still using money as a payout of the situation and not accepting responsibility. And you could go back to how Burling was the same at the start. He was all about getting the most out of the characters, the low wages, high prices, hard-headed man of business. He's trying to pay his way out of the situation again and not accepting responsibility. You can track how the younger generation characters are more affected by the message, both in this extract and across the wider play. The abrupt departure of the inspector leaves the message hanging hard in the air, but also that lighting, bright and hard lighting, when he arrives holding up the spotlight to the Burlings. You look at how the inspector arrives on the scene to how he leaves, so that there's no doubt that he's holding up this mirror, this spotlight on this family who have represented this sort of microcosm of bourgeoisie, capitalist, greedy society. But whatever you say, however you track through the text, you need to talk about the effect that the characters have in response to the inspector's questioning. How do they show their responsibility of change and the effect that these characters have on the audience? So feel free to pause and have a go at attempting this. I've deliberately not put quotations down because you would have got your bank of quotations that you've already started learning for this, I hope. Okay, this screen is a very detailed exploration of the extracts that we were looking at. It is not talking about the essay, the play as a whole. So I'm not going to read this. This is for you to pause and read through, but it might help you to add more depth of your analysis and awareness of structure, especially with the anaphora, the emotive diction, you know, the tripling, the biblical apocalypse. So that might help with that. So you can pause this video here or read it on the PowerPoint that's uploaded on Satchel One and on your email. But just remember that this is focusing just on the extract. You need to talk about the theme of responsibility as a whole within the play. Well, good luck, Year 11. I hope this was helpful, at least in giving you another chance to attempt an essay question for an Insepctor Calls. You know where we are if you need anything. All the very best.